The crack of my father's hand across my face was sharper than any sound in the silent room. He didn't see a daughter. He saw an obstacle to what he wanted for my sister. In that one violent moment, I realized my entire life's work, my beautiful art gallery, wasn't a source of pride for him. It was simply a resource to be seized. He demanded I give it all away. And when I refused, he tried to break me, but that slap wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from all over the world. Your comments create a community where storytelling thrives, and we're so grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and prepare for a journey that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Let's get started. My name is Chloe Evans, and I always believed that success was a fortress you build brick by brick to protect yourself. On the night of my gallery's 5th anniversary, surrounded by the life I had meticulously constructed, I discovered that some storms don't rage from the outside. They are invited in through the front door, wearing the familiar faces of family. The main hall of Ascend Gallery was buzzing, the air thick with the scent of expensive champagne and the low hum of cultured conversation. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the glittering Atlanta skyline, a view I'd paid for with sleepless nights and relentless ambition. Each piece of art on the walls, every polished concrete floor, was a testament to a world I had wrestled into reality. I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations from artists and collectors, my smile feeling more like a piece of armor than an expression of joy. My family was holding court near the largest installation, a cascading sculpture of polished chrome. My father, Mark, a retired real estate broker, was laughing loudly, slapping the back of a city councilman while my mother, Helen, adjusted his tie with a practiced, deferential hand. My older sister, Olivia, stood slightly apart, a practiced look of serene boredom on her face, as if this entire event was a mild inconvenience to her, much deeper, more spiritual existence as a life coach. They were a perfect portrait of support, a carefully curated image for public consumption. I'd paid for their flights, their hotel suites, and the designer outfits they'd insisted were necessary for the occasion. I received no thank you, only a clipped comment from my mother about the champagne being a bit too dry for her taste. As I approached, my father's friend, a man named Mr. Thompson, turned to me. "Your father was just telling us how he helped you get this place off the ground. Chloe, you must be so grateful for his guidance." I just smiled, a tight, practiced motion. While my father basked in the unearned credit, he'd called my business plan a cute hobby 5 years ago. The comparison started subtly, like poison seeping into the water. My Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, cornered me by the bar. "All this work, dear," she said, her eyes scanning the bustling room. "Does it really make you happy or just busy? You know, Olivia has found such a wonderful work-life balance. It's so important to nurture your soul, not just your bank account." I murmured something noncommittal, the old familiar sting tightening my chest. To them, my ambition was a character flaw, while Olivia's chronic unemployment was an enlightened lifestyle choice. I tried to focus on the purpose of the night, to feel the pride that I was supposed to feel. This gallery was my sanctuary, the only place where my choices weren't questioned, where my vision was law, but with my family present. The walls seemed to shrink, their judgment soaking into the very foundation. I watched Olivia float from one conversation to another, her laughter echoing lightly. She hadn't worked a steady job in a decade, drifting from one self-funded venture to the next. Yet my parents spoke of her with a reverent awe, praising her free spirit. Later in the evening, I stepped onto a small stage to give my speech. I thanked the artists, my staff, and the patrons who had believed in me. I spoke of the power of art to challenge and to heal. My voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. This gallery was built on the belief that a single vision, pursued with relentless passion, can create a space for others to find their own voice. I began, my heart swelling with a flicker of the pride I'd been searching for all night. Then it happened. From the side of the room, Olivia's clear, high voice cut through my own. And I'm so proud to announce that I'll be channeling some of that incredible energy into my new workshop series on unlocking your creative potential. There are flyers at the front. A ripple of confused applause trickled through the room. My words died on my lips. She had just hijacked my moment of triumph, turning my celebration into an advertisement for her latest whim. I looked over at my parents, expecting to see some sign of disapproval, but they were beaming at her, their faces alight with pride. I was invisible again. After most of the guests had left, leaving behind the lingering scent of perfume and the debris of a successful party, my family cornered me in the main hall. The janitorial staff moved quietly in the background, but the space felt strangely intimate and menacing. "Chloe, we need to talk," my father said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He stood with his arms crossed, my mother and Olivia flanking him like loyal soldiers. This wasn't a conversation, it was an ambush. He began a long, meandering speech about legacy and family responsibility. He painted Olivia as a visionary on the cusp of greatness, held back only by the lack of a proper platform. His words were smooth and practiced, the words of a salesman closing a deal. I listened in silence, a cold dread creeping up my spine, already knowing where this was headed but unable to believe they would actually say it. "Your sister needs a flagship location, a place with prestige to launch her brand properly," he continued, gesturing around at the culmination of my ambition. "This place is perfect. It has the brand recognition, the location. It's a ready-made asset." My mother nodded eagerly. "It's the least you can do. Sweetie, you've done so well for yourself. Sharing is the only right thing to do. We've already had an architect draft preliminary plans to convert the main space into a seminar hall." The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. They had already planned how to dismantle my world. I looked at Olivia, who was examining her fingernails with feigned indifference, but I saw the triumphant glint in her eye. She had known this was coming. This was her idea. My father then slid a thick folder across a glass table between us. "These are the legal documents for the title transfer. We've had our lawyer, Bill, draw them up to make it as smooth as possible. You just need to sign." I stared at the folder, at the crisp, official-looking papers that represented the complete annihilation of my professional identity. They weren't asking me to help, they were demanding a sacrifice. They saw my success not as something to be celebrated, but as a resource to be plundered for their favored child. The silence stretched, thick and heavy with expectation. They were all looking at me, their faces a mixture of self-righteous certainty and impatience. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm, a single word against a tidal wave of entitlement. My father's smile tightened. "What did you say?" he asked, a sharp edge to his voice. I stood up straighter, meeting his gaze directly. I said, "No, I am not giving you my gallery. This is my business, my career. I built it from nothing." I turned to Olivia. "I am happy to help you. Liv, I can rent you an office. I can give you seed money to start your business properly. But this," I said, sweeping my arm to encompass the room, "this is mine." Olivia's face crumpled into a mask of theatrical betrayal. "You see," she cried, turning to our parents. She's always been like this. She doesn't want me to succeed. She wants to keep me under her thumb with her charity. My mother rushed to her side, stroking her arm. Chloe, how can you be so selfish? Your sister is in pain. The absurdity of the accusation was staggering. I was the one being asked to self-immolate. Yet I was the selfish one. The argument escalated, their voices growing louder, their words more vicious. They dredged up every perceived slight from our childhood, every instance where I had chosen a book over a party, an internship over a family vacation. It was all evidence of my cold, unfeeling nature. I stood my ground, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. But my resolve was like steel. I would not let them do this. I would not be erased. Finally, seeing that his emotional tactics were failing, my father's face contorted with a rage I hadn't seen since I was a child. He took a step forward, his body radiating menace. You are a part of this family, and you will do your duty, he snarled, his voice low and dangerous. You owe us. You owe her. I lifted my chin. I don't owe anyone the life I built. That was when he snapped. The crack of his hand across my face echoed in the vast, empty gallery. A sound so sharp and final, it seemed to silence the entire city outside. The force of it sent me stumbling back a step, my cheek instantly on fire, my keys, which I had been clutching in my hand, clattered to the polished concrete floor. Time seemed to stop. The background noise of the cleaning crew faded away. There was only the ringing in my ears and the throbbing, searing pain on my face. No one moved. My mother stared, her hand flying to her mouth in a gesture that looked more like surprise than horror. Olivia's feigned tears had vanished, replaced by a wide-eyed, frozen shock. My father stood panting slightly, his hand still half raised, his face a mask of disbelief, as if he couldn't quite process what he had just done. But I knew what he had done. He had drawn a line, not in the sand, but in my soul. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A strange, chilling calm washed over me. I bent down slowly, my movements deliberate, and picked up my keys from the floor. The metal felt cool and solid in my trembling hand. I straightened up and looked at the three of them, my family, standing like statues in the wreckage of our relationship. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I saw the truth in their eyes, the shock, the flicker of regret, but no real remorse. They were not sorry for the act, only for the confrontation. I turned my back on them and walked towards the door, my footsteps echoing in the silence. Their stunned gazes followed me, but no one called out my name. No one tried to stop me. It was as if I had already become a ghost in my own life. I walked out into the cool night air, the city lights blurring through the unshed tears in my eyes. The pain in my cheek was a dull throb, but it was nothing compared to the agony in my heart. The fortress I had built had been breached from the inside. I drove not to my apartment, but back to the gallery's empty office. My cheek was a swollen, angry red in the reflection of the dark computer screen. For a long time, I just sat there, the silence of the building pressing in on me. The man who was supposed to protect me had struck me. The woman who was supposed to nurture me had watched him do it. The sister who shared my blood had instigated it all for a building. The word family had lost all meaning. It was just a collection of people who felt entitled to my pain. Then, a different feeling began to surface. Pushing through the shock and the hurt, it was a cold, hard resolve. They had wanted my gallery. They had wanted to take my power, my identity. They had used love as a weapon and family as a cage. In that moment, I decided I would not be their victim. I would not let their toxicity be the final chapter of my story. My fingers found the keyboard. I pulled up a file I hadn't looked at in months, a standing offer from a large, international art consortium based in Zurich. They had been trying to acquire the Ascend Gallery brand for the better part of a year, and had already completed most of their due diligence. I had always politely declined, unable to imagine letting go of something I had built with my own hands. But now, that reluctance felt like a foolish sentimentality. I dialed the number of my corporate lawyer, Sarah, waking her up. Her sleepy, concerned voice was the first warmth I had felt all night. "Chloe, what's wrong? It's 2 in the morning?" My own voice was flat, devoid of emotion. As I recounted the events of the evening, I told her about the demand, the prepared documents, and the slap. I heard her sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, followed by a string of curses directed at my family. "They can't do that," she said, her voice filled with a protective fury that brought tears to my eyes. "That's not just a family dispute. Chloe, that's assault." I took a shaky breath. "I know, but I'm not calling to press charges. Sarah, I'm calling to sell." There was a pause. "Sell what? The new collection?" I closed my eyes. "Everything, the brand, the building, the entire operation. I want you to call Zurich in the morning, tell them I accept their offer. But I have one condition, one non-negotiable clause." In the weeks that followed, I moved like a ghost through my own life. I went to the gallery every day, managing my staff, curating the upcoming exhibit, and speaking with artists, all with a calm, detached efficiency. No one knew the ground beneath us was about to shift. I had told only Sarah, who worked with a ferocious loyalty to expedite the deal. My family, on the other hand, seemed to have decided on a strategy of strategic silence. They sent a few tentative text messages, the kind you send when you're pretending nothing is wrong. My mother sent a photo of a rose from her garden. Olivia sent a link to a motivational article. My father sent nothing. They were waiting for me to break, to come crawling back, full of apologies for my selfishness and ready to sign their papers. They had always operated on the belief that my need for their approval was greater than my own self-respect. It was a spectacular miscalculation. I ignored their messages. I didn't answer their calls. I created a vacuum, a wall of silence so complete that it became its own answer. They had no idea that on the other side of that wall, lawyers were speaking, multi-million-dollar deals were being finalized, and my life was being fundamentally rewritten. The closing was a quiet affair, conducted via a secure video conference with a team of lawyers in Zurich. I signed the final document with a steady hand, the stroke of the pen feeling less like an ending and more like a liberation. 2 days later, the news broke. It wasn't a family announcement or a tearful confrontation. It was a press release, issued globally by the consortium. Zurich Art Holdings acquires acclaimed Ascend Gallery. Founder Chloe Evans to helm new philanthropic initiative. The story was picked up by every major art and business publication. My phone exploded with calls and messages from friends and colleagues, congratulating me on the massive, unexpected deal. I imagined my family seeing the news. I imagined my father reading it on his tablet over his morning coffee, the color draining from his face. I imagined my mother's panicked call to him, Olivia's shriek of disbelief. The building they had coveted, the asset they had tried to seize, was now owned by a faceless corporation on another continent. It had been moved so far off the chessboard that they couldn't even see it anymore. But I wasn't finished. The second part of the announcement was the real message. The bulk of my personal earnings from the sale was being used to establish the Evans Foundation for Emerging Artists, a nonprofit dedicated to providing grants and gallery space for underrepresented female artists. The press release included a quote from me: "I wanted to build a legacy that lifts people up, that gives them the resources to build their own dreams, not have them taken away." A month later, a prominent business magazine ran a feature profile on me. The cover photo showed me not in a gallery, but in a simple studio, smiling warmly at a young artist. The headline was, "The Architect Chloe Evans on Building a New Legacy." The article told the story of my career, my success, and the stunning sale. It didn't mention my family by name, but it didn't have to. It spoke of overcoming personal and professional obstacles and the importance of cutting ties with toxic influences to protect one's vision. It painted a picture of a woman who had triumphed not just in business, but over unseen adversities. It was a masterclass in quiet, undeniable revenge. The fallout was, from what I heard through the grapevine, catastrophic for them. Their friends, the ones who had been at the gala, now saw them in a new light. My father's carefully constructed image as a benevolent patriarch was shattered. Olivia's plans for her life coaching empire vanished overnight. Their social standing, built on the illusion of a perfect, successful family, crumbled. They were isolated by a scandal that was never explicitly stated, but was understood by everyone. They tried to reach me. Of course, the text turned into desperate voicemails. My father, his voice hoarse, left a message saying there had been a terrible misunderstanding. My mother sobbed into the phone, begging me to remember that we were family and that I was tearing them apart. Olivia sent a long, rambling email that swung between accusing me of destroying her future and pleading for another chance. I deleted them all without a second thought. Their apologies were not for their actions, but for the consequences. 3 months later, I stood in the small, sunlit office of my new foundation. The walls were covered not with expensive, established art, but with the vibrant, raw work of the first round of grant recipients. My life was quieter now, but infinitely more meaningful. My new family was the board of directors I had assembled, the artists I mentored, and loyal friends like Sarah who had stood by me. They were a family built on shared respect and mutual support, not on obligation and guilt. I learned that true strength isn't about building walls to keep people out, but about having the courage to open the right doors and close the wrong ones forever. My father's slap had been meant to put me in my place, but instead, it had shown me my true place was far away from them. I no longer sought their approval. I had found something far more valuable my own. Looking out the window at the city, I didn't feel anger or bitterness. I felt a quiet, profound peace. I had not just sold a gallery, I had bought back my life. We are often taught that family is an anchor, meant to hold us steady in a storm. But the most difficult lesson in life is learning to recognize when that anchor is not keeping you safe, but holding you down. This story is a reminder that you have the right to define your own sanctuary, and that true belonging isn't always found where you are born, but where you are seen, respected, and celebrated. Your worth is not a debt to be paid to others, and setting a boundary is not an act of aggression, but a profound act of peace. Sometimes, the greatest journey you can take is the one away from the life you were given, to finally build the one you deserve. Every one of us has a story about finding our strength and drawing our own lines in the sand. What did this story bring up for you? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences create a community where we can all learn from one another. If our stories resonate with you, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications to join us for more. Thank you for listening and for being a part of our community.